This is Lockpicker 1969, and welcome to my channel, and welcome to this next episode of Challenge Lock Workshop. Today we're going to be interviewing Challenge Lock maker TypeRegal. Say hi.
Hello.
So, how long have you been making challenge locks?
So I have been making challenge locks since going after Blue Belt. And I think if my photograph records are correct, that was about 2019.
Okay. Can you
So
can
it's
you
been about 4 years.
can you talk about that lock?
Yeah, so that was I was very into Undertale at the time. So I named that Papyrus Junior because I wanted it to be kind of a goofy troll kind of lock. So I named it after one of the characters and then put a junior on there.
Okay.
Um, and then I think I sent that out, and I know at least two people got it. Um, that was in one of the, I think, cheap quick set housings.
Okay.
And that was just full of essentially everything that people were talking about actively on the server. I try to put in that,
Okay.
except I couldn't handle um I think it was the shelving or any like lips on the inside.
Yeah. The undercuts.
So I couldn't, yeah, undercuts. Yeah, I couldn't do that at the time. So that was the one thing that I didn't put in that.
Okay. So, where did making that lock then take you with making challenge locks?
So after that lock, um, I kind of focused in on picking, and then I took a very long time to come back to challenge lock making, and kind of I was still very enthused by all of the different pins and everything, but I was very focused in on everything else around it. So I came back to CLs this year,
Okay.
and put out a grouping of four.
And what were those like?
So I think the first one was just a couple drunken spools and I think a Christmas tree or two. Just a little bit of fun to get me back and warmed up. And then I kind of went very nasty with one where I tried to make the entire thing a clicky nightmare.
Okay.
So everything is serrated or has extra clicks to it. I think only one of the um, Bible passageways wasn't threaded by the end of it,
Okay.
and then I just tried to make that thing as much of a clicky nightmare as I could.
Okay. Yeah,
Um,
I can
and
relate to
one of them,
the threading everything. Yeah.
yeah. And then one of them, is I think the weirdest one that I did, which was I tried to emphasize on unusual or abnormal feedback.
Okay. How did you do that?
So I did undercutting. So there was a tremendous amount of undercutting, but that was complemented with asymmetric pins.
Okay.
So pins with deep cuts that pass through over 50% coming from one side, such that it would deeply go into the undercutting.
And get really stuck.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So you said you made the original blue belt one, and you made four. Is that so? Is that you've made five challenge locks, or have you
Yes.
made other ones? Okay. Okay.
So the five that I've made have all centered around the progression system. And the four that I've put out, I think at least one of them is making its way over to Europe if it hasn't already.
Okay. Cool. So of the five total locks, which one would you say was the most difficult to make?
Um, I would say I've put the most time and effort into one I refer to as Daydara. and the 4 that I made were based off of they were themed,
Yep.
and they were themed off of the series Naruto, and the Akatsuki in it is an organization, and they have every individual in that organization has unique powers, and I tried to theme it around those
Oh,
groups.
cool. Okay.
So Deidara has a lot of torpedo pins because he focuses a lot on explosions.
Okay.
So I tried to put as many torpedo pins or mushroom pins as I could,
That's
just
cool.
to give it some theming.
That's cool.
And I think the worst part about that lock is that for the life of me, I could not make it function well.
Oh, okay.
I put so many threads into it and so many undercuts, and I made one pin way too short, and I think I it was very difficult to make because I put so many little cuts on all the pins,
Yeah.
but
So
I think
it was
the
crunchy.
person who has it, oh, it was very crunchy, and one of those pins is short enough. Um, it's essentially like a Christmas tree, but with the middle section trimmed out. So it's just a tapered point and then a flared bottom. And the issue with it is it's pointed in such a way that with the slightest touch, it will like rotate far too much in its cylinder, and it will bind incredibly hard against the threading.
Mm.
I I couldn't say that I fixed that completely before I sent it out.
Okay.
So I think I have upset a number of individuals at least with that.
So that may answer my next question, which would be, what do you think the most difficult lock is that you've sent out there for the community to open?
That's definitely the worst because it's more likely to break a pick than you are to open it. Just because that one pin you have to be so delicate with, and if you don't have that perfectly set, you'll have to bash the lock on the table in order to get it
Uh,
to unset. It's
so did this lock come
a
with
design flaw.
instructions? did,
I've messaged the individual that I sent it plenty
okay.
because I feared that they would get very upset if I did not explain this.
Yeah. So going forward I'm assuming you're intending on making more challenge locks.
Yes.
So do you intend on making them for specific pickers at all, or are you just going to continue making ones that you want to put out in the wild in the community?
I think I want to finish. I need to make a few more themed ones because I want to finish out the
Uh-huh.
rest of the organization that I themed it after originally.
That's
And
cool.
then I think I want to continue with some more themed ones because theming them around different ideas and motifs and just kind of theories is a really fun concept that I don't usually think in that way.
Okay. So other than working around a theme, what inspirations are what inspirations do you turn to when you're like sitting down to make a new challenge lock?
So typically my inspiration to create a new lock would be um kind of just getting into the groove of making new pins.
Yeah.
And then as I see these new pins come out and I see, a set of pins that I say, I really want to put those all together and see how they function off one another.
Mm-hmm.
Or something along the lines of I'll make one pin that I'm really proud of and I say, I want to focus around this.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. So what would you say is your favorite pin to create when you're sitting down? Because I find making pins very therapeutic. You kind of get into the zone when you're sitting down and doing that, and I kind of like that moment of peace when everybody will leave you alone and you can
Mm,
just sit there and just make one pin after another and just do different things and just play and have some fun making them. And
mm. Yeah, I typically like to frame it almost as though I'm sitting down to hatch an evil plot of like I sit down and I'm like, all right, what's gonna make a lock that people are gonna hate me for? And
uh-oh.
so I get the inspiration of saying, okay, how many small ridges can I put into this? How many just very odd pins can I make?
Okay.
And I try to up the diversity of my pins because it's not just one pin that I like to make, though there are definitely some that I really like. I really like the offset ones that I made, and that was for the lock I named Itachi. And those offset pins are really just really interesting. It adds a whole other dynamic of saying, how can I guarantee this will work in either direction?
Mm-hmm.
Or will this work in either direction? And, what will the feedback be like at that point? Um, and that's a really fun concept. So
Yep.
the offset pins, and then essentially anything that I can make as serrated as possible, I want to put it in my lock.
Okay. So
So serrations are one of my favorite things to add to pins.
so so I'm going to ask what your favorite modification is, but not pins wise for like the core and the chambers. What would you say your favorite mod is to do with those? Because it sounds like undercuts, but
The undercuts are a little tricky. I use a ball. It's like some kind of cutting ball bit
yeah,
for the Dremel.
it's a burr. Yep.
Yeah. Um, and I I don't like using that as much as I do just threading them.
Okay. So
Threading
you like
every
threading then?
possible.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm, it just adds so much to it with such minimal effort. You can add so much feel, so much texture to a lock that way.
Yeah. I can agree with that. Plus, threading is a pretty straightforward process too. The
Mm.
undercutting, all it takes is just doing it a little bit too much, and yeah, you have to be really careful with that. So, would you say there's any special approaches that you take in your creation and work process?
Um, I, I mean, I can't attest to other challenge lock makers, but I find that taking inspiration from a single pin, I see the theming it towards pickers a lot of people like, oh, I'll make one for you, or let me make one around somebody's level, things like that. I just really like taking that one pin, and that's kind of my unique inspiration is
The
finding a
centerpiece.
pin that I really love. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a centerpiece, and you build everything else around that. Yep.
Mm.
Yep. I've done that too. I
Yeah.
I can relate to that.
I
So,
don't I don't find anything specifically unique about my process that wouldn't be something that somebody else would do, but I definitely see people who have very unique processes.
um,
That,
I don't know. I guess from my perspective, I agree with you on building around a specific pin, maybe, or a specific mechanism with a pin with the chamber. I guess for me, though, in tying it back to a theme, usually I have a theme in mind. Um, and like for example, I do mine dragon themed and
hmm,
based around the Game of Thrones and the House of Dragon, not the series on television, but the books. There's any number of dragons in those, and they all have their own lore. So I try to find one that has a great history and story, but it also it reached its demise, and then somehow tying how that dragon was taken down and
Mm.
tying that into the lock. So if you pay attention to the lore in the logbook that I provide with a lock, in it is a hint at how you could potentially or need to address the lock to get an
Ah.
open on it. So that doesn't mean it's ever 100% clear, but at least it gives
Mhm.
you some kind of a hint. So I then design around that if I can. So yeah, that's kind of my process, I guess, that I go through.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
other than the Dremel, what are your go-to tools for making challenge locks?
So I have the journal and the tap, and then oftentimes I've had the same needle file set for the entire time I've been picking. So that's one of the big things. I use that for hauling out
Mm-hmm.
any amount of brass I need. And then just fairly recently, in terms of my experience with picking, I got a jeweler's saw,
Yep.
a small handheld jeweler's saw,
Yep.
and that blade is perfect for
Yeah.
cutting serrations.
I use it for cutting serrations and also use it for so I spin my brass rod in the Dremel, and when
Mm,
I'm ready to cut off my pin because I think it's done, I'll then use the jeweler saw to try to get a nice fine cut.
yeah.
The only problem with it is it leaves that little dimple on the
Mm,
end that you have to file off or sand off. So, but yeah, I
mm.
love using a jeweler saw. So definitely.
Mhm.
So any other tools besides that?
I mean, those, I'm a very basic challenge lock maker. I see a tool, I use it to the most of my ability.
So if you had to name one tool that you think every challenge lock maker should have in their arsenal besides a Dremel,
Mhm.
what would that tool be and why?
Um, I mean, I would have to say a set of needle files.
Mm-hmm.
You can have so many unique and varying uh, cuts and textures that you can add to pins. You can create large cutouts. You can create really nice, like flared spools. With you can have the flat side of a file to grind down. It's very specific. You can make T-pins. There's a lot you can do with a nice set of needle files.
Is there any particular brand that you recommend, or does it matter?
I have had the same Chinese, $5 set for the entire time I've been making CLs, and the set is awful, but it works for CLs,
Mm-hmm.
and I it's the same thing that I've said with picks. It's, if you have something crappy, you can make it into tools later.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with these. I've used them for prying. I'll use them for anything I need because they're just a cheap piece of metal,
Yeah.
but it also is a great file.
Yeah, and if you're like somebody that goes to in the states, people are familiar with Arbor Freight is, but
Mm.
you can pick up a few sets of those for like $10, $15, and you're good for a while. But I just for me, I found that I've got lots of those lying about different parts of the shop because they're always handy to grab for just making a little tweak on something, even in woodworking. But the every once in a while the diamond coated ones kind of really help, especially if you're going to work with like stainless or steel pins.
Yeah,
So it's kind of a necessity, I think, when you start working with steel and stuff. But
sure.
yeah. So anything else on the any other tools you would suggest other than needle files and a Dremel?
I I mean, needle files are for me essential,
Yeah.
and then the jeweler saw is a very nice to
Yes.
have kind of piece.
Uh-huh.
So if you were gonna get kitted out, get yourself a cheap jeweler saw on
Yeah.
eBay, a cheap set of files, and spend your money on the Dremel.
I think they offer, there's a jeweler saw they offer on Amazon, and it's like $15 or less. And it comes with
Exactly.
like 280 blades that you can use in it. It's just, or no, 144 blades in total.
Hmm.
And if you're careful, you can make one blade last quite a long time. So,
Yeah, I'm not careful, so I've broken plenty of those blades right now so far.
yeah, I've broken a few, but I've learned to kind of tighten it more and put less pressure or downward pressure on it. Just let it rest on what it needs to cut
Hmm.
and let the teeth do the work is what I've found out. So
Hmm.
okay, so how about last question before we wrap up? Are there any challenge lock makers you take inspiration from or admire that are out there?
Um, I definitely admire the challenge locks Diggs has been creating because I'm still stumped on the alpha, although I'm still looking eventually to make it work. But I, I mean, so many creators make such good challenge locks, way better than mine are. So, I couldn't pick just one to say, these pins are an inspiration. They're all very good, and people make incredible work with these.
You know what? I don't think it matters how good you are. It's the fact that you're willing to do it.
Hmm.
Um, because to me, the people that are making challenge locks out there, they're really doing a service to the community. No, are you going to run into any of this kind of lock in the real world? No, of course not. But these challenge locks force you to heighten your skills,
Hmm.
and then learn to overcome different things. And I think in the long run, cause you as a picker to sharpen your skills, refine them, hone them a little bit, because you are trying to overcome something someone has specifically designed to thwart you.
Sure.
So, definitely. So,
Yeah.
is there anything you'd like to say to our audience before we wrap up?
Just keep making wonderful CLs. Make more of them.
Yeah,
Put them
definitely.
everywhere. Get them in everyone's hands.
Yeah. Me personally, I probably enjoy making them more than I enjoy picking them, but I'm very much into the creative side of things, so
Oh, certainly.
definitely understand that. All right, so I want to thank you for doing the interview. I'm really just trying to get as many different people, both makers and pickers, through here to do interviews and help create more of a buzz about challenge locks. I want to just kind of reiterate for our audience that it may be listening. If you are a challenge lock maker, I am looking to do interviews with challenge lock makers who've made a lock that they would like to introduce to the community. They would like to talk about that lock, how they plan on introducing it, and then maybe if they have a way of tracking who it needs to go to provide information so that people can get on that list. So I'd like to help challenge lock makers, get a buzz going with their locks and get the community talking about it, and create that lineup.
Sure.
So all right. So with that being said, I'll wrap this one up. If you are a subscriber, thank you. If you are not yet a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications and all, and hit like on the video. And thank you for listening.